Welcome along to another episode of the Play On podcast. I'm David Simmons. I'm delighted to be joined in the studio again by Anthony Brown and Stephen Commons. Guys, thanks for coming on the show again.
No problem. Thanks for having us.
Perfect. So we look back on the weekend's football in action that's just happened. Before we go any further, I'm just going to say as well, we've started up our own Twitter account, so give it a little follow, a like, a retweet, however it all works these days, at the Play On Pod CA1. You already following us, Anthony? Yep, good. Nice one. Stephen, yep. Win?
Yes, absolutely.
Brilliant. So let's look back on some of the action. So most of the games were on Friday night. Aberdeen Hibs went down 2-0. Is Jack Ross on a sugly peg already, Anthony, do you think?
No, he's not on a sugly peg. His team's in fourth place, but he'll be feeling the heat a little bit after a couple of ropey results. I mean, losing to City rivals in the Cup and then obviously losing. I think Hibs fans are getting a bit exasperated about how Hibs are performing in the so-called bigger games against the teams at the top end of the league. They've not done particularly well against them recently. This was a chance for them to sort of go with Pittodrie and try and bounce back from a semi-final and show that they had a bit of resilience about them, and they fell flat obviously and lost to their nearest challenger. So it's a pretty damaging result in regard of their hopes of getting ahead of Aberdeen and maybe even pulling away. I think the one saving grace for Hibs at the moment is that they've got a real gap over Dundee United in fifth place, and nobody in that pack currently looks equipped to come and chase them down. But obviously I think Jack Ross will be wary of the need to stop this becoming a genuine malaise, because they did make a really good start to the season, a really strong start, and it was becoming a season that was promising a lot, and it still can deliver a lot, but they also need to be wary of going on a long run without victories and slipping towards sort of mid-table and even the bottom six, because that would put him on a sugly peg if that was to happen. But at the moment, no, he's under a bit of pressure to turn things round, but certainly nowhere near a sugly peg at this stage.
I'm sure many Hibs fans would be saying that they probably should have had a penalty in that game. Would you agree with that, Stephen?
Oh, definitely, yeah. The incident that I think it was Martin Boyle that got pushed over by Scott Wright, and it's just one of those ones where the ball's kind of ran away from Scott Wright and he's just bundled in. It was just clumsy and it's an absolute stonewaller. But I watched quite a bit of like the highlights of that game, and Hibs just absolutely shot themselves in the foot. Like the Aberdeen were okay in terms of like their creativity and stuff, but Hibs, every chance that the major chance that Aberdeen had came from Hibs' own fault. Like Porteous was really, really sloppy. Even Paul McGinn, who I believe has been really solid for them pretty much the whole season, he looked bad. So I think that will be a bit of a concern for Jack Ross. He'll probably look at that and think, well, listen, if we can actually get our own kind of ship in order, then there's no reason why we can't go on and kind of get points or win games that we should be winning. But yeah, as Anthony said, like they are in a kind of, we're still really early in the season. There's still loads of time for them to kind of go one way or the other, but they seem to be in this position where they're probably not going to go any higher than fourth, and they're definitely probably not going to be looking below them because there's already that gap. So it could get to January, February in the season, and if the cup depending on what happens in the cup competitions, they could be kind of looking at their season being potentially over. So they just want to kind of stay on the coattails of Aberdeen as much as they can and kind of take advantage of any mistakes that are made. Yeah.
Now, as you can see on your screen, the key question that we're asking tonight is, how do you rate Scotland's chances against Serbia? We are fully interactive. We're live at the moment. We're going out on Facebook, on Twitter, on YouTube as well. So we are interactive. If you've got any questions, if you've got any points you want to raise, you want the opinion of the panel, please do post it. We'll put it up and we'll discuss it. Simple as that. Another game that happened on Friday night was Ross County versus Livingston. It wasn't a great game. It finished 1-1, but the big thing to take out of that game was that 300 fans were allowed back into the stadium. Tony, are you hoping that this is going to be the way forward for most clubs?
Yeah, I think everybody is. I mean, obviously we've got to be mindful of the wider world and all the issues of the pandemic, and we've got to allow that to dictate how things unfold. But I mean, certainly it was a boost to, I think, the players of Ross County and Livingston to have supporters there. I know we had supporters earlier in the season for a wee while. But yeah, I think everybody's just desperate to get to a position where we can get fans in, even initially on a few hundred, but certainly a decent amount where it feels like a proper experience going to the football again, because I mean, I think the general consensus is that football just isn't the same without supporters. I know it's a bit cliched, but
absolutely,
it's I I think everybody's desperate to get to a point where they can just wake up on a Saturday and go to a game, pick and choose their game without having to prepare, I don't know, for sitting and watching in the house and what have you. It's obviously been a very grim year, and hopefully today's development with the vaccine is another positive in regard to people getting back inside football stadiums.
Absolutely, sooner the better. The sooner the better. So that concluded on Friday night. On Saturday, obviously, with the games on Friday evening, and there's games on Sunday as well, it was a championship card, and Hearts were at home to Inverness Cally Thistle, winning 2-0. Stephen Naismith after 47 minutes and Liam Boyce after 70 minutes. A fairly comfortable win, making it 3 out of 3. Stephen, would you say?
Yeah, it was. To be honest, towards the end, it got a wee bit cagey, because Livingston, Inverness scored probably about 5-6 minutes to go, and at that point, it's a John Robertson side. He's just went, that's fine, just go for it. Like at that point, he chucked on Dorrans, who scored, and Keatons came off the bench, and they just kind of went, well, we'd be as well getting beat 3 instead of 2. Let's just go for it. So it was always a bit of a dodgy one, and I don't want to kind of speak too soon or too early, but I feel that maybe under a Craig Levein team or a Daniel Stendhal team, that you would have felt a lot more, like I'm obviously talking as a Hearts fan, you would have felt a lot more trepidation towards the end of that game. But even when they scored, I still felt pretty comfortable watching it, thinking, we've got this covered here. A lot of that comes down to Craig Gordon. I think he's just kind of that steady Eddie presence that's there. So Hearts went brilliant. The game wasn't a great game. I honestly don't think Hearts have reached anywhere near their top level, and I think Robbie's pretty upfront about that.
I mean, you touched on Craig Gordon's performance there on Saturday. We discussed this last week on the show about him deserving a Scotland call-up.
Because he's had the gloves recently and he's done well. He doesn't deserve to be dropped as much. I think Gordon is probably a superior keeper, and still, even at this age, is probably still capable of more exceptional saves. I think you've got to factor in that Marshall has bided his time, if you like, and now he's got the gloves, he deserves to keep them. But yeah, having Gordon as a backup, that's a pretty good position to be in for Scotland. I saw the picture that the SFA tweeted today of Craig Gordon and David Marshall. I think it was maybe about 2004, how it started and how it's going. It just says everything about these two guys, that they were around in the Bertie Vogts era and they're still going strong in 2020.
It's amazing.
Scotland's two best goalkeepers, arguably.
I mean, Stephen, you touched on when we talked about it last week, the kind of presence and the environment that he'll change being part of that squad. Do you think he'll still bring that? Do you think he'll still really boost the players and maybe the younger ones? I mean, I say younger ones are all experienced in that squad, aren't they? But how do you think he'll impact the squad on Thursday?
As I said last week, I think that, I don't profess to know Craig Gordon personally, but he doesn't strike me as the kind of Robert Snodgrass type character that's going to go in there and like rally the troops that way. I think he's more of a calming influence. But as I said to you, if he's going there as the third choice goalie, which I think he is, then you're as well having someone like him than having a younger goalkeeper that's maybe just trying to make a name for himself. Because at the end of the day, if he's not going to play, you would be as well having someone with his experience to kind of, as I say, even if he gives 1% to another one of the players who is playing, that could be the difference. Like it's kind of that tight at the moment. So yeah, he's there on his ability, not more than anything else. But I think his experience and what he's been through, and I think that's potentially going to be great for Scotland. But we'll just wait and see. Yeah,
I mean, we'll talk a bit more about Scotland later on in the show. But while we're talking about Hearts, there's a documentary on tonight on BBC at 9 o'clock, given the ins and outs of Hearts. I think it's around about the era when Craig Levein parted ways and Daniel Stendhal came in. Are you looking forward to this one, guys? We'll start with you, Anthony. I mean, you're a Scottish football writer, covered a lot to do with Hearts and Hibs. What do you think they'll go in depth? What sort of footage can we expect to see, do you think?
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to seeing what they're going to produce. I mean, obviously it's as eventful a season as you could have wished for in terms of doing a documentary on Hearts. I dare say Hearts would have liked it to have been a season where they finished in the top 4, won the Scottish Cup, and obviously avoided relegation, and it was a great season for everybody concerned, which was the hope. If we go back to the start of last season, Hearts genuinely felt they had a squad ready to challenge for third. They had tooled up, they had signed a lot of good players, reputable players, and Craig Levein felt that this was the time for the team to kick on after a couple of underwhelming seasons. And obviously we know now panned out the complete opposite. It was a total disaster of a season on so many levels. But in terms of doing a documentary, it's a dream for anybody who came up with that idea. I mean, you've got the Craig Levine's team unravelling at the start of the season, just can't buy a win, supporters protests, and it was around September time after the Motherwell game. All the individual players involved. They had the boy Machino in from Japan. That was a bit of a sort of circus, I suppose, with everybody coming from Japan to see how he was getting on. So I dare say there'll be a bit of that in it. Then you had the managerial change in November, December time. Austin McPhee coming in for a short spell.
That's right, yeah.
And then Daniel Stendhal coming in. I mean, he's quite a sort of entertaining character as well. So yeah, I think it's going to be fascinating viewing. What it'll actually show us in terms of sensational stuff, I'm not sure. I don't know if it's not going to give us behind the scenes access to the moment Craig Levine was sacked, for instance, but I'm sure there'll be some quite enlightening moments for supporters who want to know what goes on behind the scenes. And even for myself, although I was in there and I had a good idea of what was going on, I think it will be quite illuminating to just see exactly what was going on and
Perfect.
how it all looks.
Talking about being documented and behind the scenes, I have to give this another plug because this is superb. If you've not already got a copy, this is Anthony's book. It's there, Anthony Brown, Reminiscing with Legends, the heart story of the Cup win of 1998. How's it going, Anthony? How's the book sales going? Are you glad you spent the time and wrote this book now?
Yeah, it's been really good. It's been a sort of whirlwind year for me, really, just writing the book, and then because it's come out so quickly after I've finished writing it, it's been non-stop, and the sort of last month or so has been a promotional period, and I've really enjoyed that. It's been pretty tiring, but it's also been really enjoyable, and just getting the feedback from everybody, it's been great. People asking about it, it's the sort of thing, it doesn't get tiring. It's in terms of people asking about it, it's something that obviously I've invested.
Finding it enjoyable.
I've invested everything into it in terms of the last year, apart from family time. Obviously, it's been my sort of project for 2020, and it's pretty rewarding to see it in print there. I think my designer's done a really good job of bringing it all together, and I've had a lot of compliments on it and what have you, so it feels like a worthwhile venture. So yeah, really enjoyed
Definitely.
it.
One last shameless plug for it. We can get the Hearts football store as well and online at Big Cartel. Keep me right here, Anthony.
Legends98.bigcartel.com.
I was close.
Or in the Hearts shop, as you say.
Perfect. Go out and get yourself a copy, all you Hearts fans. Or if you've got a family member or a loved one that's a Hearts fan, a great stocking filler for Christmas. Perfect. Moving back to the football then. So in the Championship on Saturday, Wraith 5, Morton 0. Are they the ones that are maybe going to prove a bit of a stumbling block for Hearts in that division, Stephen, do you think?
Potentially, yeah. I mean, they've started absolutely on fire. You've got to remember, like, as much as they've just come up from League One, and they were maybe a bit controversially promoted from that league as well. It's John McGlynn is in charge. You've got experienced guys like Jerry McDonald in that team. They're no mugs. Like they're a good. I mean, they're proving that now. They're a good side. But I have to say, like, as a Hearts fan, I watched them play in the Betfred Cup at the start of the season. They played Hearts, and it was an absolute Hearts reserve team that played them and absolutely battered them. It was 3-1, I think. Craig Whiting got a hat-trick. And at that point, I looked at them and thought, they're not going to be anywhere near the top echelons of that league come now. And I mean, how surprised I am to see them there now, but good on them. I mean, and long may it continue. But they're not just beating teams, they're absolutely dismantling people. So, good luck to them.
No, that's it. 5-0, a thumping there against Morton. Other results in that league: Arbroath 1, Queen of the South 1, Ayr United 0, Dunfermline 0. I personally thought Dunfermline were going to mount a bit of a challenge against Hearts. Do you have any opinions on that, Anthony, or do you think that Hearts are maybe going to romp that league, hopefully? I mean, it's 3 wins out of 3 now, with a game in hand.
Well, they've had the best possible start. I think if you'd offered Robbie 7 wins out of 7, obviously he'd have taken it, no problem. It's gone probably as well as he could have hoped, but I think the one thing that makes this a very interesting championship season is the fact it's 27 games. That could work in Hearts' favour, or it could work against them, depending on how Wraith Rovers, for instance, keep going. Because obviously Hearts, although they're the only team in the league with a 100% record, they're not top of the league at the minute. So if Wraith and Dunfermline were to maintain some sort of form, Hearts have obviously got slightly less leeway than in ordinary circumstances to overhaul them. So they need to be mindful of that. But at the same time, if Hearts were to get their noses in front, you would think there's no catching them. And in that regard, the Dunfermline Hearts game a week on Friday will be pretty big. It will give us a good indication of whether Hearts are going to run away with this league or whether they are going to slip up here and there. Because I think, to be fair, Hearts, they've had, in championship terms, they've had probably as hard a start as they could have expected in terms of playing Dundee, not one of the title favourites, but a team you'd expect to be in the playoffs. Arbroath away is never going to be easy for anybody, as their home record sort of testifies over the past year or two. And obviously Inverness, another side you would expect to be in the playoffs, and then they've got Dunfermline away, who are probably, I don't know, third or fourth favourites to finish in the playoff positions as well. So certainly when winning the first three, that was never going to be a gimme for Hearts. It wasn't like they had Alloa at home, or, you know what I mean, 3 part-time teams in a row. They've had some decent sides, and they've coped in different ways with each test they've had. So yeah, I mean, that Dunfermline Hearts at East End Park a week on Friday, that'll be a test for Hearts. It's one I would expect them to come through, but certainly it's not a gimme anyway.
Yeah, no, I'm looking forward to it. It should be a good game. The Premier League returned with 2 fixtures on Sunday, obviously because we're playing in Europe. Motherwell were playing Celtic and Rangers were playing Hamilton. It finished at Fir Park, Celtic 4, Motherwell 1, an Elyounoussi hat-trick and Ncham with a goal as well. Is that possibly Neil Lennon, I use this phrase quite a lot, turned the corner, but after the 4-1 defeat in Europe during the week to Sparta Prague? Stephen, what do you think? Is he back on the fans' side now, or is he still...
I think as football fans, we're all a bit kind of reactive at this moment in time, and kind of not just in Scottish football. I think it happens very much so in English football as well. That after one result, you're going, "Oh God, right," and then the follow, so between Thursday and Saturday, does that mean that your opinion changes from one day to the next? I just think that it's really difficult to kind of judge it from looking from the outside, but. To me, you look at that Celtic squad and they are they should be dismantling teams like Sparta. Like Sparta Prague are a good side, but the Sparta Prague that Celtic played were not a good side, because it was like their under-19s and reserves. They were absolutely obliterated with COVID and injuries. So for them to lose on that sort of stage, it was really important for them to have to bounce back on Sunday, and fair play to them, they did. But again, if you watch that game, Celtic 4-1, to me it wasn't potentially a 4-1 game. Like, Motherwell had a lot of chances in that game as well. Yeah. So like, Celtic of old, I might be a bit of a romantic looking back on the good old Celtic days, but they used to go to places like Fir Park and like one shot on target for Motherwell, they would be quite happy going home saying, we did all right there. But like, Motherwell had 4 or 5 really good chances in that game, and on another day it could have been a different score. But again, you just need to kind of wait and see. But I don't know if Lennon, another couple of bad results, and again things turn back on him again, it's going to be that kind of season with 10 in a row at stake.
Thanks to Sean Ross for the comment. As you can all see on the screen, the Mighty Suns lost their first game on Saturday. Me thinking that Jim Duffy must go because he's lost one game. Jim Duffy, an actual very good manager, and obviously he had a stint at Hibs as well, didn't he?
You don't want to talk about that.
No, Jim Duffy must stay, definitely. Rangers, a man that might be on the way out though. Rangers won 8-0 at Ibrox against Hamilton. Is Brian Rice on a sugly peg then, Anthony?
I think he's on a sugly peg, yeah. Jack Ross certainly isn't, but Brian Rice is. I saw some footage of fans remonstrating with him outside New Douglas Park last night, or whatever it's called at the minute. But that's never a good scene for a manager, where they're having to defend themselves against supporters after a match. So I think it's fair to say he's under the cosh. I mean, obviously Hamilton are traditionally quite loyal to their managers. They usually give them more time than most clubs, possibly because they've punched above their weight for so long that, I don't know, maybe there's a feeling that they can afford to give their manager a bit more time. There's maybe slightly less, in terms of having a smaller fan base, there's maybe slightly less pressure in that regard to pull the trigger when the going gets tough.
Yeah.
I think you would certainly say Brian Rice is in dangerous territory at the minute.
Well, one thing we talked about off air, sorry to interrupt there, Stephen, but I mean, who takes that job? If Brian Rice goes, who do you get to take that job? I mean, I personally said, and I probably jumped in with 2 feet, I said Stevie Crawford. And realistically, is Dunfermline a bigger club than Hamilton, possibly? What's your opinion on that, Stephen?
Yeah, probably. Yeah, they probably are a bigger club, bigger fan base. But the thing with Hamilton is, like, we talked again about this off air. How do you judge Hamilton? They're a really, really difficult team to look at and think, like, they've, as you say, punched above their weight for so long. Every single year they should have been relegated. You look at their squad compared to everybody else, and no, like, they are a dog shit pile of players. Like, they are not a good group, but for some reason, and it's not just been Brian Rice, other managers have just seemed to be able to get this extra 5-10% out of these players.
Yeah.
But eventually that comes to an end. And what the thing with Brian Rice, and again, sometimes you can say that this is a really good thing, but Brian Rice comes for the Yogi Hughes school of management, but he's not Yogi Hughes. So Yogi Hughes got his teams playing attractive, stylish football, but with a work ethic. And he obviously tries to do the same thing with Hamilton. And they try and play, but sometimes they try and play all the time. So they come up against teams where, like, an 8-0 is not unexpected, because you can go into a game and go to, like, 1-2 goals down, and a lot of teams will go, right, that's enough, boys, shut up shop, like, we're not going to see anymore. Hamilton just don't seem to have that gene in them to say, right, nothing else comes past us. They just want to keep playing and playing and playing, and this is what happens. Eh?
I mean, as much as we're slating Hamilton, thanks again to Joe Porter on your comment, poor Hamilton, they look doomed, and they do at the moment, they do look doomed. But one thing we can't take away from this is Rangers were good, and Rangers are good this season, and they're really mounting a chance at winning the league. I know it's early days, but we can maybe say the same with what we said to Hearts. Who, apart from Celtic, who's going to stop Rangers? Aberdeen, Hibs? Do we really think that they're going to mount a challenge? What do you think, Anthony? Who's going to be the one that's going to stop Rangers? Is it solely going to be Celtic that are going to take points off them, or?
I'm sure they'll slip up at some point, because especially when the pressure cranks up in the second half of the season. I mean, we've seen this before. I'm not saying that Rangers will crumble, but we've seen this before where Rangers look untouchable and then suddenly they hit a wee rut like they did last year after they won at Parkhead. I don't see that happening anytime soon, because they do look really good. Like, they're a real. I mean, I've been an admirer of Gerrard since he came in. I know he's had a lot of abuse and criticism over the years because they've never won anything, but I think that's a very harsh barometer to judge him by, given what he inherited, the situation he came into where Celtic were so far ahead of Rangers, and people are judging him because he's not won a trophy as Rangers manager. For me, he's been an absolutely brilliant appointment, and it's now playing out that he has got a team somehow that is able to challenge Celtic and possibly even pick them to this title, which would, if you'd said to me 3 years ago Rangers will stop 10 in a row, I think anybody would have said that's a pipe dream, but the guy's done a phenomenal job.
And it was never going to happen overnight for him, was it? When he came in, he was...
the thing with Rangers is that they've had a framework, basically. If you I know we do want to get down to comparing Rangers and Celtic all the time, but you compare the two of those teams at this moment in time, right? Celtic don't have a formation. They don't have a set way of playing. Like, basically, their formation is dictated week to week on who's available. So they brought in Shane Duffy so they could go three at the back. Suddenly, Shane Duffy's not playing very well, and the two guys, the other two centre halves who were deemed not good enough, are now almost like, oh, when are they coming back? We need them back. We need them back. So Rangers, on the other hand, have got this framework where they can take players out, put players back in. Like, for example, they took Morelos out, they put Defoe up front, they take out Helander, they put Balogun in. It's I mean, Steven Gerrard's been very lucky that he's been given that sort of freedom by the board to go and get players that he wants that fit into his framework. But the facts are, that's what they've got. They've got a squad of players who can interchange, but the style always stays the same.
Yep.
So again, long term, you're going to see if that's a positive or a negative. But to me, it looks like they're a far better set as a squad than Celtic are at this moment in time.
Yeah, thanks to Gordon Adams, who's been interactive as well. The boy Cannon done a great job at Hamilton. Was that Martin Cannon?
Yeah.
Martin Canning.
He did do a good job. Was it Billy Reid that was in there before him?
Billy Reid. Alec Neil was there as
Alec
well.
Neil, of course.
They've had some long-serving managers. If they were to move Brian Rice on, I dare say Guillaume Bouzelin would be under consideration for promotion. I mean, he's been there a long time as the assistant, and I think he's quite highly regarded. I'm not saying he would get the job, but I think he'd surely fancy his chances if that job was to come up anytime soon. It
would depend what route they're wanting to go down. So if they want to basically survive at all costs, then they'd be tough to rip up how they play. Or if they look at the squad, the players, and say, right, who's going to be suited to that, then the only logical one for me is John Hughes.
Yeah.
Because you've got his assistant has built this squad, so it's the same type of players that they're going to be used to working with. And John Hughes, I mean, look at what he did at like Inverness and Falkirk and that. Like, how is he out of a job at this moment in time? It's absolutely scandalous.
Yeah, no, I think he'd be a great appointment. Has he not got a background with Boozlin as well? I mean, I think, did they not do something together at Hibs possibly? I'm maybe getting my wires
Rice
crossed.
was his assistant.
Yeah.
There we go. Thanks to Dale Cornett for the message. Rangers are brilliant to watch this season, and I touched on that earlier as well against Hamilton. Rangers, they looked absolutely superb, have to agree. Right, we'll move on to some games that are coming up this week, but before we do that, there was a story that broke today. You had Labour leader Richard Leonard. He wants to actually lift the COVID ban on amateur football in Scotland. This is something that's been quite big on social media today. It's only fair that we talk about it. We'll maybe start with you, Anthony. What's your thoughts on this? Should the boys down the public parks be able to play football again? There's no, obviously, segregation from the pitch. Should this be a go, or is this something you've got an opinion on? Or
I play 7-a-side with my mates on a Thursday night, and it's the highlight of my week, so I'm really missing it. I don't know if that falls under this umbrella of amateur football because it's not competitive in any way, but
I mean, that's what Richard actually said. Richard Leonard, the Labour leader, he said that there's a growing concern for mental health and physical health. So what you just said there makes absolute sense. It's like what you look forward to at the week. It's a form of exercise. It's good for your mental health. Sorry to butt in there. You were going to say, obviously, that 7-a-sides might not be covered under that, but 11-a-sides down the public park.
I can relate to why. Yeah. Well, I think everybody wants to get everything back up and running, but yeah, I mean, if there was scope to get any more football than there already is up and running, then yes, let's go for it as long as it's safe to do so. I mean, the outdoor aspect of it for me, I mean, I'm no expert on the COVID situation, so I wouldn't want to talk about the medical aspect of it, but certainly the fact it's outdoor and you've got kids playing football, you've got professional football going on. I mean, if there's scope to get amateur football back up and running, then I don't think you'll find anybody who plays amateur football complaining.
Exactly. I'm sure if it gets green lighted, then every club will go back and beyond to make sure that they cover every base, to make sure that there's cleaning stations, whatever it may take, with water bottles, lack of changing rooms. Stephen, you're involved in amateur football. I take it your guys are just crying to get back.
Desperate, mate, desperate. Like, just touching on what you were saying there about the sort of COVID, like, we at the start of pre-season, so we've now probably done pre-season twice, because at the start of the pre-season we had Zoom calls with the league, and they made it very clear we had to go on online courses. We had to, each club had to have a COVID officer. So we've had to go through all these different hoops, jump through all these different hoops to get football on. But at the start of the process, talking from our guys' point of view, we looked at it and thought, let's see if we can get it on, that'd be great. But the more you got into it, the more you saw, like, we're a brand new team this year, so we've just started. But we got this kind of group of guys together. A lot of them maybe knew each other, a lot of them didn't. But you could see that bond was getting created, and the same as what you were saying. Like, I'm not saying it was the highlight of their week to come and train, but it's a release for them. Like, they can get out the house. They've maybe got the wife and the kids. They've been working. Like, all these things kind of disappear. You go run about for 90 minutes with your mates, do some training drills. Like, we were keeping things very social distanced until we were allowed to do contact training, which we did. We then played games. Like, we had, I think it was 5 pre-season games in the run up to what was supposed to be the start of the season. And obviously, amateur football is a small place in Edinburgh. Like, everyone knows each other. Everyone can. From what I know, there wasn't any outbreaks within teams. There wasn't any major incidents which involved. Which, if that had been the case, you could understand why they would want to shut it down. Yep. But at the same time, like, yeah, mental health, physical health, it's huge for these guys, and just the release aspect of, like, as we say, it's a stressful time for everyone. Just in life at the moment. Absolutely. So if you can have something like that to release it, then it's great. Definitely. Thanks to Sean again for another comment. He was down south at the weekend watching a semi-pro football game. Crowd there, didn't see any problems with it. There we go. Thanks for the comment, Sean. If you do have any opinions on anything that we're talking about, do get involved. Drop us a comment. We do want to know, though, what's the chances of Scotland beating Serbia on Thursday night? That's what we're going to talk about just now. Like we just said, they're in Serbia. It's a one-off game, Anthony. What we're going to do? We're going to win. The closer it gets, the more optimistic I'm getting. I mean, to be honest, I'm probably in this. I think a lot of people are in this camp where they've probably become disengaged with the national team over the last 10, 15 years. I certainly don't have the same passion for it as I did maybe when I was younger, and I don't know if that's just because the team hasn't been performing. I'd like to think it's not as straightforward as that, but I certainly haven't had the same
feeling of Scotland are playing today, I'm right up for it. But I'm starting to get that this week. I'm starting to feel it a wee bit like, and I think it's a formidable game for them because obviously Serbia, you look at the teams on paper and Serbia are a good bit stronger than Scotland. But I was having a look at Serbia's results recently. They're not killing teams. They're beating teams you would expect them to beat, the likes of Lithuania and Luxembourg, but they're not. I looked at their the results over the past 2 years. They've not taken any big scalps. They've not hammered anybody into the ground in a way that would make you think this is a team to be feared. I'm not saying that they won't do that to Scotland. They certainly have the players to do it, and probably their main result of the last 2 years looks to be their victory in Norway recently, which is obviously a good result. But again, I keep coming back to this no fans in the stadium thing, and I think that's massive for Scotland. I think it's been billed as our biggest game in however long, 10, 15 years. I would say probably since the playoff against Holland in 2003, it's our biggest game since the Amsterdam Arena when we got beat 6-0. I was there actually. But obviously it's a massive game for Scotland. It's a massive game for Serbia as well. But will it feel as big a game to the Serbian team as it feels to the Scottish team? I don't know if it will, because Serbia have been at tournaments more recently. They're not going to have the drive or the support. Scotland players, I think, will feel the backing of a nation because this is as close as we've been for so long. Yep. I think Scotland will have a wee extra edge to them on Thursday. I'm not saying I don't know how Serbia will approach it. Obviously, this COVID thing with the Italian situation isn't ideal for them. But I don't think we're without a hope this week.
Well, Joe Potter kind of agrees with you. He says, I think we can win. Serbia have a terrible home record and Scotland look well organised and difficult to beat just now. Fraser is a big miss though, and that's something we're going to talk about because he's out, so is Grant Hanley. Armstrong's in, Griffiths is available. Do they go right in, Stephen? How would you line it up?
I think Christie probably replaces Fraser as the kind of one off the striker. I would have Armstrong playing. I think Armstrong's brilliant. But then Scotland have got so many good midfielders. It's just trying to find that balance, which, I mean, Stevie Clark has done a great job in terms of kind of results, and he's actually potentially found a formation that can kind of work as well. But the big thing for me was always finding that balance in the midfield. Like, you've got McGinn, you've got Armstrong, you've got McGregor, like you've got a lot of good players that can play in the middle of the park, and just trying to get that balance right of who's sitting, who's driving on. Like moving McTominay back to centre half could be a master stroke, but again, are you just putting square pegs in round holes? And so it's difficult. It's difficult to kind of know who he's going to pick, or whether he's going to put Kieran Tierney back in. And Declan Gallagher's been outstanding in the games I've seen. But then again, it's another step up to the next level. It's tough. But as Anthony said, with the no fans, that's huge because, like, as much as you've got the old firm guys, even the guys who play in England, not many of them are playing European competitions. So maybe Tierney, but going to the places like this, they're so hostile, and especially in a one-off game like that, that place would be absolutely rocking. It would be on fire. There would be smoke everywhere, like flares going off, and it's whether the players would be able to it's just another aspect that they would have to try and deal with other than the game. So you take all that out of the equation, and you've got to think that it's going to be, they're going to have an improved chance. But yeah, I would love to see it. Obviously, I'm not. I'll be honest with you. I'm not a massive national team fan. I've never been a big Tartan Army man. But I remember '98. I'm old enough to remember that, and I remember the buzz of the country. I mean, that just to get that back after the 2020 that we've had would be incredible. Yeah,
absolutely. Thanks to Niz for the comment. Do keep them coming. Scotland will fail. We're average at best. Hope that I'm wrong, though. I appreciate the comment. That's the thing. Everyone's got an opinion. No matter what it may be, keep them coming in. We do appreciate all your comments. I mean, Serbia are heavy favourites. They're, 8-13 on at the bookies, and Scotland are 9-2, obviously being the away team as expected. But yeah, no, it should be a good one. Obviously, I know the answer to this question, but I'm going to ask it anyway. You would take a horrible display and a 1-0 win than a brilliant footballing aspect and maybe getting beat 2-1, wouldn't you, Anthony?
I think that's, if Scotland are to prevail, that's the likeliest way it's going to be achieved. I don't see them going there and winning 2 or 3-0, for instance. although they have gone to Eastern Europe and got results like that, albeit against inferior opposition to this Serbian team, but they've gone out to that part of the world and had big results against, I'm sure they had a big win against Macedonia. I know that's a totally different level of opposition.
Yeah.
But they've been out to Croatia and won when Snodgrass scored. They've got a result in them. They're. I mean, let's be honest, these are not as limited as Scotland are in terms of having top class players. They have got good players. They've got, I mean, John McGinn and Andy Robertson, Tierney, these boys are playing in a good league. I'm not saying that the whole Scotland squad is at that level, but they've got players that could hurt Serbia if Serbia don't turn up. But ultimately, it's going to need Scotland to be very well organised and try and probably nick something on the counter-attack or even go extra time and penalties.
Yeah, and it's getting, obviously, Stevie Clark to get the best out of these players, like you say, like Tierney, Robertson, McTominay, they're all playing at a high level. It's getting them to all gel as one, Stephen, isn't it?
Yeah. That's the tough part of it. Like, trying to get them all into a system that works for the entire team. Like, that's why he's paid to be the national team manager. Like, it's not like normal management where you can go and just buy a specific player. Like, if you don't have it, you either have to find somebody who's maybe just slightly down a level, or you need to find someone like they have done with McTominay and they've tried to do with Tierney in the past, who you could potentially just play slightly out of position, hope that they do a job for you. But I think he's been quite clever with the way, like, obviously we were talking about Craig Gordon earlier and kind of having him in and around the squad. The way that they've called up Griffiths, like, a lot of people will look at that and go, oh, well, damn right, he's scored some good goals for Celtic recently. But the way that they've talked, like, when I've heard Steve Clark talk about it and his assistants, they've almost been kind of talking about Griffiths coming on as an impact sub. And like, if that's how they've brought him into the squad in that capacity, I think that's brilliant management, because you look at that and you think, he might not be fit to play every single game for the next 3 games, but if we can get 10 minutes, 15 minutes, 20 minutes out of him in every one of these games, and he can come on and make a difference, like, as you say, if they've dogged and they stay in the game for long periods, you bring something like Griffiths off the bench, it's a brilliant weapon to have. So whether he's fit or not, I love the fact that he's gone and looked at it in that much detail. He's looked at it and thought, even if he's getting 20 minutes, I'm calling this guy up. Mm-hmm. That's to me is really good management.
Absolutely. Thanks to Ian for the comment. Mon the Tartan Army, I am confident. That's the kind of comments we like. Hi to Welshie as well. Welshie88 must be fancy Scotland to score. Depends on how well we defend as a team as to whether we qualify or not. Absolutely. So, Anthony, I'm going to ask you, what's the score going to be on Thursday night? What's your prediction? I'm going to write it down. Again, if I give you £10 to put on at the bookies, what's the scorecast?
I'll go 2-1 Scotland.
2-1 Scotland.
That's my heart talking. I think realistically you've got to expect Serbia to win, but I won't be massively surprised if Scotland pulls something out of the bag, which is something I never thought I would say when I knew that these two teams would be playing in this match.
And Stephen, yourself?
I'm going to say 0-0.
Oh.
0-0 during extra time, and Scotland get put out on penalties.
Put out on penalties. You horrible man.
Standard Scotland. It's standard
horrible
Scotland.
Horrible man. That's the worst case scenario, that you play all that 120 minutes.
But it's the hope that kills you, mate. That's what they've done for since '98. So,
do you know what? I'll say 1-1. I'll say 1-1 full time, and I say Griffiths scores in extra time and we win 2-1.
I feel there's a positive vibe about the country now in terms of football. I don't know where it's come from, but I feel like there is a genuine positivity starting to build going into this game. People that, like myself, who maybe thought Scotland have got no chance when this game first came to fruition maybe a month or so ago, are now starting to just, I don't know, maybe it's just the usual sort of false hope that builds up when it comes to the national team, but I do feel there's a vibe building in Scotland at the minute that suggests something can happen this Thursday.
Absolutely.
We'll see.
Hopefully,
that's usually when they get the legs karate kicked out for Underland as well. So,
well, regardless, we'll be talking about it next week, and hopefully it's for the best. Thanks again, Ian. He thinks Serbia 1, Scotland 3. There we go. That'd be a good result. We'd take that, absolutely. 2 Griffiths 3 kicks again, hopefully.
I'd like to see Considine start, though. I know we're having the discussion about Tierney playing left centre back.
Absolutely.
I would rather just have a no nonsense, rugged, strong left centre back, good in the air, and he'll be on a real high after making his debut last month. I just think with this Tierney Robertson thing on the left, I don't like this trying to shoehorn. They're both quality players, but I don't like the idea of trying to shoehorn them in.
So what would you go with? Will you still go with the same formation, the 3-5-2?
I don't think he's going to change from that.
Yeah,
but if
so
it comes down to left centre back,
McTominay, Gallagher, and
I suppose so. I mean, Gallagher, I suppose the question mark would be he's coming off a 4-1 defeat, and so's O'Donnell against Celtic. So you've got two members of that Motherwell defence going up against Serbia.
McKenna, did McKenna score at the weekend? Scott McKenna
For Forest,
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah, I think so.
So he's and I think he's actually doing pretty well for Forest as well. I think he's getting rave reviews down there. So again, it's so tough. Like this is the thing. We can't sit here tonight and like pick what we would pick. Imagine what Steve Clark's having to
a
go
lot
through.
of options. That's the thing. Every Scotland manager has all these options, but the problem is they're all very similar. There's never. I mean, I know we're talking about Tierney and Considine. There is a total difference in class there, but at the same time, you could argue Considine is a and a half than Tierney.
In that system, it's a better option. So, and it's mental to say that. Like you're picking a guy who has played all his career at Aberdeen, who's got his first Scotland call-up at 33 or whatever it is, against a guy who plays for Arsenal week in, week out. And
but Tierney's a left back, though.
He's played. Well, I mean, I know like yesterday was not a good example he uses for Arsenal, but he played left centre back the last two games, I think. So I don't know.
Steve
really
Clark's team selection is going to be very interesting, and hopefully it's one that gets us across the line. Thanks to David Knox, a chance to bring some much needed positivity for our country. A scruffy 1-0 win for Scotland, that's how he sees it panning out. Ian McIntosh always worries me when Scotland fans are confident. Kind of agree with that a bit as well, Ian. And Sean Ross again, 2-1 to Scotland. A Griffiths free kick will win it. I said that as well, mate. Extra time. I can see Griffiths stepping up just on the edge of the 18, bang in the top corner. That's how Mystic Meg here sees it panning out. So yeah, I mean, that's kind of covered the whole Scotland thing coming up on Thursday. Hopefully we're talking about it next week in a positive manner. We're on our way to the championships. We see that happening, guys? Yes? No? One last thing?
No.
Yes.
Yeah, there we go. Love it. Splitting the camp. A couple of things that happened down south over the week that we just have to talk about, okay? So there was a couple of key moments that happened in the Premier League down in England that I just want to touch on. One, Bamford's offside decision at Leeds. Did you both see this?
Yeah.
So his legs, his waist and his body is all onside, but he's pointing as to where he wants the ball. Play me in here, play me in here. His hand's offside. Is that football, Stephen?
Yeah, so the rules are obviously any part of your body that you can score a goal with. So they've said shoulder is, I mean, it must be millimetres offside, right? So there's obviously two arguments to this, whether it's a case of, well, if he's offside, he's offside. Whether it's a millimetre or 15 metres, it doesn't really matter, he's offside. But the rules were, and this system was brought in place to stop clear and obvious refereeing errors. That's not a refereeing error. Like, at the worst case scenario, he's in line, but his entire body is clearly onside, other than potentially his shoulder. Like, that is
his shoulder's
scandalous.
only up because he's pointing to where he wants the ball. Exactly. He's not trying to play the ball.
What advantage is he getting for going, play me here? Like, it's pathetic. And week after week after week, we're getting more and more things like this, and they're not doing themselves any favour. Like, I noticed yesterday in the Man City Liverpool game that again the referee, the pitch side monitor was used by the referee, which is great, and they're making a bit of progress on that side of things. But again, the referee should be going across and seeing something like that Bamford incident and going, guys, are you kidding me on? Why have you even brought me across to look at this? This is ridiculous. Like again, the rules need to be changed. Because I think that, to be fair to the referees, they're just applying the letter of the law. They're just applying what they're told by FIFA and the governing bodies to do. So the rules need to change. The handball rule as well. I mean, we could go on for hours and hours about that, but so many penalties have been given. Like the one against Dyer for was it Newcastle against Tottenham? Eric Dyer's literally under the ball, turned his back, and it's hit his hand as his back's turned. I mean, that wouldn't be given in boys' club football, never mind the Premier League in England. It's just ridiculous.
Do you think this is something the Premier League will try and review, Anthony? Do you think that they'll continue with VAR next season, or has there been too many sort of episodes where it's just been farcical, if you like?
I don't know. It certainly feels like there's a groundswell of opposition to it, though. I mean, it seems to be spoiling every match or having a negative impact on virtually every match, to the point where people are really getting frustrated by it now. I think fundamentally, as I said last week, the issue I've got with it is it stops the sort of immediacy of crowd celebrations and what have you, and just puts that seed of doubt, and you score a great goal in the last minute and you have to stop and think, could this get chalked off in a minute? I mean, I'm glad it's not reached Scottish football yet.
No, you said it last week, Stephen. Keep that as far away from Scottish football.
Absolutely. The longer that we can continue to not afford it, the better. Like that is fine by me. Like I'm quite happy to just ridicule Willie Collum on a week-to-week basis. I wouldn't want to have to feel sorry for him by using systems like that. So nah, we're fine.
Well, Ian's got a different opinion. He's on. He says VAR's going to get better, and I'd like to see it in the SPFL. The SPL, sorry. Again, Stephen, that's going to come down to cost, isn't it? I don't think.
As I said to you, I don't have a problem with VAR. Like I think VAR, if it's a great tool, and if it's used properly, then brilliant. But they need to get clear, like the clear and obvious, like thing needs to be used a lot more in terms of, like that shouldn't even be getting referred to VAR. Like the VAR referee should look at that and go, well, it's not a clear and obvious error because it's taken us 15 attempts and we needed to get somebody with a trigonometry set out to work out whether his shoulder's off. Like that, how is that clear and obvious? It's ridiculous. Yeah. So, as I said to you, the tool itself, there's no issue with that, and I agree with the person that left the comment there that it is a good tool, and if it's used right, it would be an asset in any league, including Scotland. But you would need to sit down and get the parameters put in properly for it to be any good.
Yeah, and Ross kind of agrees with you. VAR's not a problem in Germany. We talked about this last week about how the Germans and the Australians implemented VAR, and you touched on obviously Australians with the referee's earpiece and how they communicate, and that's also been a good example of it. So if Scotland ever were to afford it and have it implemented here, then it's maybe a case to have a look at across in Germany and Australia.
Would you back Scottish football to do it properly though?
Absolutely not.
The other side of the coin, isn't it? Thanks to Ian again. VAR would have been handy in the League Cup final and Hibs games, 2 costly goals against Rangers. Thanks very much for your comment there, mate. The other incident in the Premier League down in England that I want to touch on was the West Ham Fulham game, and I'm sure you probably know where I'm going with this. Right into injury time, 98 minutes, West Ham are 1-0 up. Fulham gets a penalty. You think, oh, here we go, we're going to equalise here, it's going to bust everybody's coupon that had West Ham. Up steps the player Lookman, and he makes a right chorus and verse of it, doesn't he, guys? Did you all see it?
Yep.
What was your thoughts on that, Anthony? If you're the gaffer and he's done that in the last minute of the game to get you a point away from home, you go through him like a ton of bricks, don't you?
I suppose you do, but I guess it from his point of view, if it goes in, everybody's saying, oh, audacious, well done, mate, and all that. But it's the same, it's similar to that Jason Cummings situation in the Scottish Cup semi-final in 2016 when he did the same thing at 0-0 in the semi-final against Dundee United. I mean, some players will try it. If it comes off, you look brilliant. If it doesn't, you look like an idiot and you get slaughtered for it on podcasts like this.
That's it. What was your thoughts on it, Stephen?
Yeah, I think he must have had West Ham on his last man standing or something. Like as Anthony said, it's one of these ones that if it comes off, you're absolutely praising the guy to high heaven for just having the audacity and the balls to do it. But he just looked so stupid, and the funniest part of the whole thing was Scott Parker. Like Scott Parker, I can imagine being a bit tenacious and a bit rowdy when it comes to the dressing room. Scott Parker just looked like, wait till that dressing room door closes, you're getting it. Like
exactly. What was funny for me was Fabianski. He made a save. He picked his side. He dived. And he had time to dive, get up, and still make the save. There was literally no force in the chip. If you're going to do it, it has to be on target, it has to be down the middle, and it has to have a little bit of force in it. It didn't look like it was even going to cross the line if Fabianski wasn't there.
Nah, my 5-year-old nephew can kick a ball harder than what Lookman did. So it's it's just one of these ones that guy, I think, potentially could go on and have a great career. And I just think he's going to look back on that with a bit of embarrassment.
Do you think he'll be dropped for the next game?
No. Well, the fact is, somebody made the decision to give him that penalty. So whether he was the designated taker or whether because it was towards the end of the game, the penalty taker might have been off. But at the end of the day, it's not like he's stepping up there and there's 5 other players going, what's he taking this penalty for? Like, they must have trusted him to a point. So, and I think from his performances have been great up till now. Like he's done pretty well for them. So, no, it's just one of these ones that you say, learn from it. He's still a young guy. Move on.
Don't do it again.
Yeah, you're not hitting the next one.
Something we never really talked about was the games tomorrow night, Betfred. So I'm looking forward to these because a team that I'm really enjoying watching the results this season is Cove Rangers. Now, they've made leaps and bounds since being non-league. Like you said last week, Anthony, they've got a bit of money behind them. They've got good backing. They're bringing some good players in on loan. They're managed by Paul Hartley. They are away to Dundee. I'm looking to see how they're going to cope against Dundee. How do you see that one panning out even?
Again, anything can happen in this competition. And especially with no fans, we've seen plenty sort of fourth tier teams beat championship teams and even premiership teams in these group stages over the last few years. It's a dangerous game for Dundee. I mean, James McPake's been getting a wee bit of criticism from certain quarters, so it's probably not the tie he wants against Paul Hartley, a former Dundee manager. And obviously, as you say, Cove Rangers are going well. They'll be dangerous. They'll come down. They'll have a bit of a go. So it's not going to be a.
It's a no lose for Cove, really, is it? It's a no lose. They'll give everything. I mean, Dundee are in the league, a league above, isn't it? So
one league now. Yeah, but I think honestly, I think McPake's under a lot of pressure there. I think he could potentially go soon because not only the results weren't great towards the end of last season, they stuck with him, they backed him, they let him bring in somebody like Charlie Adam, which is obviously there's not many teams in that league that'll be having guys with that sort of money behind them. So. And they struggled. They drew 3-3 on Friday night with Alloa. It's not been a good start for them at all. And tactically against Hearts, the opening day of the season, they were so poor. Like they set up. Everyone knew. Anyone who'd watched Hearts in any of the Betfred games or any of the pre-season games knew exactly how Hearts were going to line up. And he went 3 at the back and with wing backs against those two flying wingers for Hearts, and they just got ripped to pieces for the first 25-30 minutes. And fair play to him, he changed it at half time, but just to have that naivety at that sort of a level, I mean.
And he's a fairly young manager as well, isn't he?
Yes, yeah, and Dundee have done great by him in terms of giving him that job in the first place, and I think he was really well thought of behind the scenes, but he obviously had a really close personal relationship with the likes of Dorrans that he brought in, who's his mate, who's now up and left. He's away to Australia, I think, so he's terminated his contract with Dundee, gone. Obviously you've got Charlie Adams there, but everyone else is kind of like, I think one of their most experienced players is Jordan McGee, who's still a relatively young guy. So they've got a lot of good young players at Dundee, but I don't think he's going to be long there. Eh?
Yeah, I mean, I love an underdog story, so I'm hoping that Cove do well there. Other underdogs, Broa Rangers, they're travelling to Forfar to play, and Kelty Hearts, they're at home to Peterhead. Now, I'd love Kelty Hearts to get a result, just solely because what happened to them with the whole COVID situation, because they deserve the playoff with Brora Rangers, so I hope Brora do well as well to at least play against Brecon, who still managed to keep their place. Hearts travel East Fife. Do we see another Hearts victory there? Because obviously they're going to be without Gordon, Boyce, Smith. Should that be a comfortable win in the Betfred? Is it time to give obviously younger players a wee run out here, Anthony?
It should be a Hearts win, but I mean it doesn't always work out like that. But I mean, I think Hearts will be driven to maintain their 100% record, because I think the sort of momentum that you can get from that, from saying, even if it is a relatively meaningless game for Hearts, just being able to say we've won all 8 games this season, that builds a bit of sort of invincibility in the camp, if you like, mental invincibility. So I think Robbie will be desperate to win the game, even though he doesn't necessarily need the win. As you say, he's going to be missing a few players, the guys that are away on international duty. But it'll probably be a chance to get some game time into some of the guys who haven't played quite as regularly. The likes of Haring and Halliday, maybe even a couple of younger boys. You might see Brandon start again, perhaps. I would imagine he would start right back unless Cammy Logan got a shot. The goalkeeper would be Stewart, probably, or Zlamal. So yeah, it'll not be a first choice Hearts team. I think Walker's still out. So yeah, there'll be a few sort of fringe guys coming in, but you would still expect Hearts to.
With the squad that Hearts have got, I mean, we've been well documented, the squad depth that they've got, and they've got some good young players as well. Hearts, like as you say, Cammy Logan is like, every time I've seen him, he looks incredible. So like giving guys like that a bit of a chance for a run out against a team who are going to be out to beat you, like they're going to be scrambling, because they didn't care if Hearts are playing their under-19s players. If they can get a win against Hearts, it's great for these East Fife players. So,
absolutely.
it'll be interesting to see what team Nielsen picks for that game. But I would really like to see the team getting mixed up a bit and some boys getting minutes.
One guy that come out one manager, that come out and said he'll be mixing things up is John Robertson. He takes his Cali Thistle team to play Raith Rovers, who we talked about earlier on in the show, who are flying at the moment. That should be a good game because Robertson always sets out his team to attack, and he says he's going to give his youngsters a rest. Is that a good example of what to use the cup games for, Anthony? Do you think this is the sort of platform where you give the younger guys a shot at it?
I think you want to progress first and foremost. So it depends if you're through whether you're going to play the kids. But yeah, I mean, any situation that allows you to play youngsters is a good thing, even if it is whether it's through choice or necessity. Yeah, I mean, Inverness, Raith Rovers, that should be a decent game. Two good championship sides.
Inverness I think they're toiling for players at the moment as well. So a lot of their young players were playing on Saturday against Hearts. But they were a team. I don't know if you remember back to. There was that documentary about was it Fort William or one of the Highland League teams who were so bad they hadn't won a game for like 2 seasons.
They were putting out the young boys on loan down there, weren't they?
So Inverness tried to put a team into the Highland League, like a B team, and they got rejected. So what they did instead was they just went and found the worst team in the Highland League and just loaned them 13 players, and then they started winning games. So, but a lot of these guys who were loaned out to, I'm sure it was Fort William, forgive me if that's wrong, are now into their first team and they're doing well. So it just shows you like. It's exactly the same situation for when Hearts were in administration. They had no choice but to force these boys into the team, and a lot of them paid off and did a really good job for Hearts. So Inverness potentially could be in that same situation. They've got a lot of injury problems, a lot of guys just kind of coming back from injury. So they've got a few of these young guys coming in now who, I mean, they didn't look at a place against Hearts on Saturday. So good luck to them, eh?
Yeah, definitely. So we've talked almost for an hour now. The show's almost over. We have discussed everything from managers that should be sacked to the Scotland national team. We've actually mentioned 3 different managers: McPake, Brian Rice and Neil Lennon, about Sugarly Pegs. Who's going to go first, guys? Just one name. Stephen.
Brian Rice.
Anthony.
I don't like these discussions. Brian Rice, I would imagine.
Put you on the spot. Like I said, that's almost the end of the show. We've discussed everything from managers being sacked, Scottish national teams, everything like that. Hopefully next Monday, we're going to be talking about Scotland qualifying. All I need to say is thanks to Anthony Brown for coming on the show. Thanks to Stephen Collins. Thanks to you. Thanks to everybody that joined in and posted a comment as well. Please like and share this. If you can find our YouTube page, you can subscribe to that as well and find out every time that we're on. We've got a new Twitter page. If you could kindly like that and share that, that'd be great. You can search for the Play On podcast there. And of course, Anthony's book is available. One last shameless plug. Get yourself out and pick that up for any Hearts fans in the family. I'll catch you same time next week here on the Play On podcast.